And I do want to say that today we was over in Camelot, where our new mayor, Mayor Khalid, has moved in, and he lives over there. And so they had the news story out, and when news can take things in clips, and that's why I don't do them. Let's have a whole spokesperson. I just don't even try to make those mistakes. That's why y'all don't see me on the media, because I just don't like that. My reports, y'all is here every week, and that's the only people I need to be reporting to. And so anyway, so I was like, we, the city of South Fulton, is going to be moving the office in there as well. And I want to correct this whole action. If anybody saw the Facebook live post, is we've been working with Camelot for quite some time. However, we came to a conclusion that we would just literally have to do something about it. So Mayor Edwards and I started a task force along with Chief Meadows of an interior task force that's going to also involve community members from that area as well, on both sides and both factions. And so we was handpicked them and got it together. And however, the process in the last couple of months just got, due to the election, just got kind of pushed to the back burner. But this is in collaboration with the Fulton County Housing Authority. And so by Mayor Khalid moving in there, and I said we as in the city of South Fulton, we as in the board of Fulton County Housing Authority actually owns a couple of units over there. So for the task force, we will have a operating field office directly on location from one of those units that will incorporate everybody from the task force being able to utilize. And it's nothing but just an open space and like a meeting space. So we remove the barriers of excuses, and we just being able to have somewhere to operate that people can see what we can conceptualize with their input. And so we'll kind of be on ground zero, at ground zero. And now that the new mayor is there and he is brought up to speed. And so I did went off of that correction. So it is something that we have been addressing, and it's something that we will continue to address, because this is going to be a long process, as we have owner occupiers who, in every sense of the word, is going to be part of anything that's redeveloped there, because we're not displacing anybody, any seniors or anybody, but to owner occupiers and the people who are vested in there heavily, we will be moving forward with their input. So I just wanted to clear that up so y'all hear from me. Now with that, I want to take an opportunity. Chief Meadows, everybody have public safety issues. You have the top dog, the boss man. The buck stops right here. And he was so gracious enough to come on and grace us with his time and presence today. So Chief, just give us any updates and the exciting news about any crime rates and anything that's whether it goes up or down. And so you have the floor, and then we're gonna open it up for questions.
So I wanted to thank you, Councilman, for inviting me here tonight. Certainly, when we think about 2021, it certainly presented its own unique set of challenges with COVID and everything else that's been going on. Right now, I think we've lost probably about 20% of our police department to either being quarantined or people infected with the virus. So as you can imagine, that could be rather taxing on any department. And it's not just us. The fire department and police departments all over the country are suffering from the same increases as it relates to lost man hours. And so we're proud of the fact that we were able to reduce crime for a third straight year. And in District 5, we're extremely happy that percentage of decrease was 34%, which was the largest decrease of all of the other districts, in the city of South Fulton. And so that's actually by design. Initially, when we first came in and we sat down and we did an analysis of where all the crime was occurring, 59% of that happened between districts 5, 6, and 7. And so making an impact on those numbers was going to be huge for us. And so having that 34% reduction in District 5 and then a 22% reduction in District 6 respectively, was a big is a big deal for us. But we're still nowhere near where we want to be. I was talking with one of the other council members the other day, and she said, "Well, I was looking at our numbers, and they're still kind of high." And I said, when we first started, our numbers were astronomical when you look at it per capita. And so being able to chip away at those numbers becomes extremely important. And we wanted to make sure that we got those numbers down, and we want to keep whittling away at those numbers every year until they get to a place to where we feel like we're at what the national norm should be. But understanding that, I know that a lot of people, because crime has been going in the right direction, we're starting to get more quality of life types of complaints. ATVs, I think people shooting guns in the air at night and things of that nature are the types of complaints that we've been getting, particularly around the Burnett Gym area. And one of the things that we've done in response to that, we've had our traffic unit to do directed patrols over there, particularly later at night when we were getting a majority of those complaints. And we've seen fewer complaints, but at the same time, we're still getting them, which tells us that the activity is still taking place. And so we are encouraging citizens to, if you know it's your neighbor, you can remain anonymous. Go ahead and report that address to us, because one of the things that we've done is that we've gotten anonymous tips, and we've gone back out that next day and collected shell casings. Well, let me tell you what we do with those shell casings. We put them in the national database, and it automatically scans the markings, and they're compared to other crime scenes. And so we've been able to link 9 different ballistic pieces of evidence over the course of the year to different the different crimes throughout the city, just by citizens picking up the phone and calling us and telling us, who's shooting in the air. And then when we get back over there that next day, we're able to collect the shell casings and keep those things as potential evidence. And so, having said that, I'm going to stop talking for a minute. I see a couple of hands are raised, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions right now.
Okay, absolutely. Tamiko, if you can just monitor that, go by whoever first raised a hand, and let's ask away. But I do want to say this, though, is that about the crimes being solved, about the citizens getting involved. As my coach used to talk to the basketball, he says anybody can shoot the ball, but it's all about the follow through.
Right.
So, and I say that to say because a lot more crimes can be reported if the person just follows through. And sometimes, honestly, it might be requested for you to come and testify. And but without that testimony, that's how a lot of reoccurring crimes are there issued, because it is a retaliation thing. If people have a fear of that, and as they should, but for those brave few who do it, those people are no longer able to be on our streets because they are in the place where they need to be for what their consequences is to their actions. And so I do want to just say that. But go ahead. Who has a question?
And I'd like to follow up with that just a little bit, because normally on shots fired calls, people think that the police officers are going to come directly to your house. What I'm encouraging people to do, because 99% of the time when a shot fired call, people don't want the police to come to their house. And so if you call 911 and you want to speak with the police officer directly, make sure you let the dispatcher know that, because typically what the officers will do, they'll come in the area if we don't have a specific address to see if they can hear where the shooting is coming from. And if they are not able to determine that, then they just kind of do a directed patrol in the area. What we don't want to do is put any of our citizens in harm's way, because I get some complaints for people saying, well, I called the police and nobody showed up. Well, that's not always the case. When we go back, I'll find out that a police officer was dispatched, but the call the caller usually hasn't said, I would like to speak with the police officer. And what we're asking the dispatchers to do is to make sure they ask that question specifically. Now, many of you know that we don't provide our own E911 service. We kind of rely on Fulton County for that, and that's a whole nother issue. We're working to wean ourselves away from Fulton County because, quite frankly, I don't think that we're getting the type of service that we're paying for from the county with respects to E911 services. But at the end of the day, it's the process that we have now, and so we've asked the 911 director to make sure that the dispatchers are asking those questions, whether or not the citizen wants to speak with the officer or not.
Absolutely. And you know what, Chief, but you've been telling that story. I do have something to say as a positive and why that this is effective. Because if many who was remember on the very first call that we started with this Monday night platform, there was a complaint from a community about the people shooting and carrying guns. And it came down to this one particular property. And they was just like, hey, well, come on over and see. And so we went over that night after we got off the call. And I said, well, what do y'all want to see happen? They said, we want them gone. And through the SEPTA program with Lieutenant Williams, just going around and with the same community involvement now. And the same call who said that we received lip service. I said, we don't do lip service around here. We actually provide metrics. By the fifth call, their objective was achieved through the same community involvement, but now with more resolve from the police enforced policies that would take place in this SEPTA program, which is still continuing and ongoing, by the way. But I do want to share that because that really did happen. That's a actual metric right here. So I thank you for that, Chief. Absolutely, because I almost forgot all about it because we just run to the problem solver and keep going. And so
I see Dan and Andre both have their hands up. I don't know.
Let me see. Go ahead, Andre. He needs to be unmuted.
Okay. Well, thank you to Councilman Reeves for facilitating the conversation, and thank you, Chief Meadows, for your time. So, my question initially, before you even start talking, was going to be about the gunshots in the air. So I'm glad you started off with that, and I think it's a major concern for a lot of people. Because we were recently having a conversation on next door about it. Obviously around the holidays is a time when that tends to happen. But my question is, and it's, to me, it's more than just a quality of life crime, because with the impending danger of those bullets coming down, I, for one, a bullet was found in my roof after it was discovered in my roof after a leak. We went up there to investigate the leak, found a bullet hole. Well, not a bullet, but a bullet hole. And to my surprise, a lot of my neighbors reported the same thing. So I'm wondering, hasn't there been any, injuries reported related to these gunshots? Because I'd be surprised if there wasn't.
Well, I have to be perfectly honest with you from the straight. Now, we typically monitor crimes from week to week, right? And sometimes we'll have accidental shootings. So far this year, we've had 9 accidental shootings. 5 of them involve children who found weapons inside of their home and wound up shooting themselves or shooting someone else inside of the house. 4 of them was an individual it was an adult playing with a weapon, and it went off and hit someone. And 3, believe it or not, the individuals were cleaning the weapons, and the accidental discharges happened, and someone was accidentally shot. So as far as a projectile going through someone's window and hitting someone, we haven't had that scenario this year in 2021. I do know that in 2020 and 2019, we might have had one or maybe 2 incidences in 2019. I'm struggling to remember, but I look at every shooting incident year by year. And we do it specifically because our goal is and will always be to reduce violent crime. Now, when I say quality of life stuff, these are things that I don't classify. They're classified by the FBI in the UCR guidelines. There's violent crime, there's property crime, and then everything else is quality of life crimes. And so property crimes is usually if someone breaks into your house, and steals your TV, or someone breaks into your car, or someone steals your car. With discharging a gun in the air, there has to be some intent to actually harm a specific individual. And in that case, it would be classified as a violent crime. And so those are the three different classifications of crimes that the FBI looks at when they are examining crime rates in the various cities.
Okay, thank you. If I may ask just a quick follow-up question to that, thank you for your response. And I'm happy to know that there hasn't been any reported injuries based on, just careless gunplay out there. But as far as what we're doing to address it, besides citizens reporting shootings, is there any technology that we can employ or are employing to try to pinpoint where these guns are being fired so that we can, take some of these guys off the streets?
So there's two things that we're doing right now. We've asked our body camera vendor to implement gunshot technology in our police officers' body cameras. So if our police officers are out and about and a gunshot rings out, then their body cameras automatically start recording. Shot Spotter, which is a technology that I tested during my time in Atlanta, is extremely expensive. It's $150,000 for one sensor, and they cover one radius of a square mile. I met with the CEO for Shot Spotter maybe about 10 years ago, and I asked them to come up with a pricing model that was conducive to smaller jurisdictions, because cities like the city of South Fulton really can't afford to spend $150,000 to cover 1 square mile, because we have 100 square miles. And so that's a significant amount of money to deploy throughout the city. And so I've met with other vendors, other technology vendors, and the technology is becoming cheaper now. And so there are some communities where we have flock cameras. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they have like license plate reader technology in them. And Flock right now is in the process of implementing gunshot technology in their cameras. Now, their cameras currently are $2,000 a piece, and then they have a yearly subscription rate. And so a lot of these subdivisions are putting them at the entrance of their subdivisions. And they're also looking at upgrading their cameras once that technology is available. I'm extremely excited about that, because I've met with the CEO for Flock on several different occasions, and I stressed to him the need to implement gunshot technology, and it's becoming cheaper. It's just, as we move forward, I believe we'll be able to get to a place to where if every subdivision, we have a little over 500 subdivisions in the city of South Fulton, if every subdivision, or let's say 90% of the subdivisions implemented those cameras in their subdivisions. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of cameras throughout the city of South Fulton with gunshot technology incorporated in them. And that would serve as a huge force multiplier, because what that does, it gives us a longitude, latitude location for where those shots are potentially coming from. And so we're not there yet, but we're certainly headed in that direction.
That's good news. Thank you, sir.
Oh, Chief, I live off of Feldwood Road, and
Yes.
for the past 3 years, I've reported a drug house to your department, and I haven't seen any reduction in the amount of cars that keep going in and out of there and spending at least 10 minutes. I've sent emails, I've talked to many people about it. The neighbors are all scared about it. We do have gunshots at nighttime, but we have cars that go in and out of that property 24/7 about every 10 minutes. And one day I got frustrated because one of my neighbors was going over there And I asked him, I said, what do you go there for? And he kind of put his head down and he said, it's one of the only places to go to get drugs. How can this go on for so long?
Is this over near the red house, the red barn, I think it is?
Red Barn. No, it's a Feldwood Road up near the railroad tracks.
It's the one that's coming around the curve and they got the entrance is like the two houses by the Stacks Road.
I actually know things, but you wouldn't happen to have the address with.
I think it's 5300, but again, they've got some of the letters torn off of the mailbox, and the house doesn't have any, but there's cameras on there, and it doesn't take anybody to just park on the side of the road for 5 minutes to see the vast amount of cars going in and out of there.
That's have you spoken with Lieutenant McKessie? She's over our narcotics unit.
I don't remember. There was several people. I know one day when I called because they had the Feldwood Road backed up, they kind of surveillance the area, but then again, this has been 3 years now, and I just haven't seen anything.
Right, Chief. I think I know what he's talking about, but I think that you want to have this conversation with him directly and Lieutenant McKessie offline, because without your strategy out there. So, but I know what he's talking about.
Can you give him my cell phone number? Because I know of a house off in one of the subdivisions over there, but I haven't heard of one on Feldwood itself. But I'm sure, listen, I know Shannon McKessie, she's a bulldog when it comes to drug houses. And so if you take down my number,
Hang on a second.
404 558 5535, and call me right after we get off of this call. And what I'm going to do is, or just text me your email address and I'll loop Lieutenant McKessie in. We'll go ahead and get her started on it.
Okay, let me get your number again here. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm ready for your number.
It's 404 558 5535.
Okay.
Okay.
And I didn't want to point that out, but y'all know it's got a lot of fives in there. So it's 5-star service, and we're in the 5th district. And so you're going to be able to rely on that. Yeah. So does anybody else have any questions? Oh, but you know what? I do want to clear something there, because I do, while people are here on this call, is we do hear a lot about, they spend all this money on all this tank. It's a tank. It's a tank. It's a tank. It's a tank. Now, this Battle Cats, can you please provide the metrics of why that investment was so important and the results it already yielded to date?
Yeah. So, we bought, when I first came over to the city of South Fulton, I was inundated with complaints, just like the one Dan just mentioned. I mean, and I brought over some of my narcotics folks. They work for me in Atlanta. They work for me in College Park, and now they're over here. And they know how I like my investigations to go. And so as we began to identify the amount of drug houses throughout the city of South Fulton, I mean, we literally, within a month's time, our first month, we identified 69 different drug locations, and just within the first month. Well, as you can imagine, that number is more than triple now since we're 3 years into it. And so when you look at the level of firepower that we're confiscating we put just about every one of our search warrants on Facebook, unless we have some follow-up investigations associated with it, then we kind of hold it a little closer to the vest. And what I mean by follow-up, sometimes you'll find out that one drug location is related to another and to another and to another. And so we may not want to put that information out initially. And the level of firepower that a lot of these drug houses had, I mean, we were seriously outgunned. And I like to use the Breonna Taylor as an analogy for us to explain why this was so important, because when we look at the number of search warrants that we've served over 2021, we served 66 search warrants over 2021. And at any one of those times, somebody could have discharged a weapon outside of any one of those homes, which puts our police officers at a serious disadvantage. And so when I think about the situation with Breonna Taylor, there's an arm that comes out of the front of that Bearcat, and it pushes the door open, which keeps a police officer from having to be in front of that door at the time we're making entry. And what happened with Breonna Taylor was when the person inside of the house started shooting, the police returned fire, and she was accidentally shot and killed while she was lying in the bed sleeping. Well, having that Bearcat and being able to push that door open, if someone starts shooting from the inside, there's no reason to return fire because, the Bearcat is going to absorb those projectiles. And then we're able to clearly, let people know. And we already have a recording in the Bearcat that can be heard for almost one city block, telling them that we have a search warrant and that we're getting ready to enter the premises. And so it's really for the protection of our citizens, it's for the protection of our officers, and it's considered a rescue vehicle more than anything. If something happened, if we had an active shooter, and you don't have an armored vehicle to go into a situation to get people out of, for a city the size of South Fulton with 100,000 residents, that's just unheard of that you don't have that capacity and that ability to save lives in that manner. And if people think, well, how often does that happen? Well, we served 66 search warrants this past year. The year before that, I think the number was 82. And so you think about the potential that could go wrong with any one of those scenarios. Well, we've had a couple of times when the Bearcat just pulled up and people just came out with their hands in the air. But at the end of the day, a lot of these drug dealers know they know the reputation of our narcotics unit, and they've been very successful. That's why I have no doubt, Dan, that we'll be able to get something done with the situation over on Fellwood. It's really just a matter of me getting information in the hands of the right people.
Chief Meadows, what happens to the landlords of these properties where these drug houses are operated?
So we filed seizure orders on 3 properties where drug dealers have paid cash for some of the homes themselves. With absentee landlords, we have to give them a letter of cease and desist. In other words, we have to let them know the people that you're renting to they're selling drugs in the house. And if it continues after the district attorney's office is satisfied that you're aware of the circumstances and you allow it to continue, then we'll serve a seizure order with them. Those circumstances aren't nearly as easy because you have to show that the owner has knowledge, the owner is complicit in it and somehow, and then there has to be a mortgage because if we seize it, then we have to pay off the mortgage. The mortgage has to be such that the city would be willing to, pay off that mortgage and assume it. But with most of these drug dealers, they pay cash for those homes, and there are no mortgages on them.
Interesting.
So just say in a case, Chief, that the city can buy that and option out. What program do you have in place or tentatively working on for those houses, and how would they be repurposed and reused?
Well, once we do, I brought my expert in assets and forfeiture with me from Atlanta. She's seized so far over $4 million in drug assets in the 4 years that I've been here. But what happens, the way the federal laws are written, those properties can only be used for public safety purposes. In other words, if we wanted to take them and put them out for youth programs, or if we wanted to have diversion programs and things of that nature, then we could do that. It's been my experience that if they're in the middle of subdivisions, most people don't want it. you know, they don't want diversion programs in their neighborhood. Everybody is in favor of programming for our youth as long as it doesn't encroach, you know, in their subdivision. We want it, but we don't want it here. Basically, is what we bump up against a lot when it comes to those. And so during my time in Atlanta, because people would fight back against programming in their community, we wound up selling a lot of those homes rather than implementing programs in it.
Well, let me ask you a question, because if it's a public safety, building, could that be like a mini subset where officers can just go in the community and maybe shift change or maybe just post up?
It can be. It's been my experience that if we use it more for officer housing in those troubled areas, if we help them go in and find low interest loans and just to try to get more police officers in the community, that's been a more accepted use of those types of properties. You know, but at the end of the day, we just have to find out what's in the best interest of the individual neighborhoods, because some neighborhoods want the youth program there and some don't. Some want to use it for officer housing and some don't. And so it's really going to be important. One of the things that I'll be starting up in 2022, I'm sorry, is a citizens advisory council for services that many of our citizens would like to see us implement in the city of South Fulton. And the reason I haven't done it before now is because when I first got here, we had 87 police officers who cover 100 square miles, right? And that was probably 2 times 3 times smaller than the actual manpower we needed. And so there were some really basic needs that we had to bring forward in the police department. And we're still nowhere near where we need to be in terms of our manpower. But the mayor and council has been gracious in terms of allowing us to build the organization organically. We want to get to 300 police officers. We're at 178 now. And so what we've done every year is tried to add more and more police officers. And since the pandemic has hit, recruitment has been a challenge because, you know, you're not able to go through all of your processes with, you know, medical examinations, physical examinations, and things of that nature. It's just kind of slowed the process down for us. And so we feel very good about where we are in terms of our recruitment, but we just need more right now.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, this is Wanda Lewis. Thank you, Chief Meadows, for joining us. Thank you, Corey, Councilman Reeves, for inviting him. And I just want to give kudos to the City of South Fulton Police Department. I follow you on Facebook and I see the good things that you're doing in the community, especially pleased with the gun safety thing that you did for with Daphne Jordan for the kids a couple of weeks ago. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And
we expect to do 1 a quarter. And the reason that we're doing it is because we had far too many children shot with their parents' weapons in South Fulton last year. I mentioned earlier the number is up to it's up to 5 now within a 12-month calendar year, and that's just something. In fact, the day that we did the class, a child was shot in the stomach, and you know, everybody asked, well, are you going to charge the parents? And to be honest with you, I agonize over decisions like that because first off, your child has already been shot, and then here's the police coming in to charge individuals. But if for no other reason, if we do, and we will be in some of these cases, we want to make sure that we have some type of diversion program so that we can mandate that these parents go through these courses and then their record will be expunged. And so that's something that we're working on right now. And that's the only reason that some of the parents haven't been charged, because we haven't completed the process that we want to see in place. Listen, we're not about criminalizing people, but then we want to educate folks too, so that this doesn't happen again.
Great. So my question is, with the precinct on Old National, are we going to see that precinct move or grow? Because I know at one time you guys were gonna go down to, I guess, the Ingles location at the end of Old National.
Mhm.
But we really enjoy having your presence on Old National and in this area. So I was just wondering, what does the future look like as far as where is the precinct gonna stay where it is? Because I
No,
visited
it's,
there recently and it's a huge hot pothole right now. I was like, okay,
I
we
know.
deserve to live in there.
And believe it or not, we fill that pothole 3 times and it keeps sinking. It sank every time. And I've been praying to get out of that building. Right now we're working on a building. Unfortunately, it's not on Old National, that we're going to try to move to. But my commitment is to building our headquarters on Old National. This place that we're moving to is going to be a temporary facility, but there will always be a precinct on Old National. Um, that's never going to not be the case. I'm looking at when we move out of that place at the Aaron Rents building, some other space right now that we'll be renting. Is more than likely going to be down near where the Marshalls and the um, Burlington's is right now. I'm in discussions with them that will potentially be moving in a space down there, and that'll be the Old National Precinct, and it will have a presence there, much like the one up at the Aaron Rents building. But we need close to 70,000 square feet to adequately house the police department. And right now, the Aaron Rents building that we're in right now, it's only 12,000 square feet. And so, as you could imagine, the police department is scattered out throughout the city of South Fulton in different facilities. And our goal is to try to get everything under one roof. And so, we're looking at some property. I don't really want to tell you exactly where it is, but
Okay.
it is on Old National where we will build potentially a 50,000 square foot police headquarters within the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, great. And my last question is, I've seen on the news, and you just mentioned that your goal is 300 officers, and we're not quite there yet. What incentives are you guys offering to try to help with the recruitment? Because I saw on the news recently where other cities are offering, the different things. So I know competition has to be hard to, when you're competing with other
It is.
cities offering that.
It is, and when I steal police officers from other jurisdictions, and I'm friends with all of those police chiefs. I say, you know how the game is played, um, but the good thing about South Fulton is that the mayor and council voted to make our police officers the highest paid in the region. Our starting pay is $52,000 a year, and Atlanta is 48. Which is the second highest in the region. And so that's one of the things that put a feather in our cap. But I've just recently submitted a proposal to the city manager that allows us to give new hirees a hiring bonus. And we also want to look at retention bonuses as well. And I asked them to see if we could use the CARES Act money as possibly part of the retention piece so that we don't have to use tax dollars. But the hiring bonus, I know we cannot use for that purpose. And so we're looking at different avenues. And so I've asked for a $3,000 hiring bonus. And I've seen some departments like Brookhaven, they're offering a $9,000 hiring bonus. But, the truth is, if you want to go and get a certain level of experience doing certain things, most people tend to shy away from departments like Brookhaven and Roswell. You'll see a lot of police officers that just want to, if they're retired or if they want to go to places like that. But people that really want to get in and be part of change, they tend to gravitate towards your Atlantas, your South Fulton, so that they can get the experience that they'll need to ultimately further their careers. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Miss Johnson.
Hey, Miss Johnson.
How are you today?
Just fine, just fine.
I want to know, did you know anything about the car chase that went down Benchmark about 3 weeks ago? And
Mhm.
evidently the driver did not know the neighborhood. So when he got to the end of Benchmark, he turned that car around so fast and went down Transit. So, me and you have discussed, this is my second chase in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they caught him or not, but there's only about three ways in here. So I don't understand when the police is now do this. I don't like the car chase in the neighborhood, but if you have to do them, there's only three ways in and out of the Fairwood neighborhood. Couldn't they block both of all those entrants and catch the driver?
Yes, ma'am. But I think, was that the Georgia State Patrol? I don't think it was the city of South Fulton that
It
engaged.
might have been. They was going so fast. I mean, that's
Mhm.
just totally ridiculous in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I am familiar with it. It was some gang members, I think, that had carjacked someone, and when they were coming through the neighborhood, our people put a lookout over the radio, and the Georgia State Patrol was. We have a really good partnership with the Georgia State Patrol. They help us along Old National. They help us along Fulton Industrial. But I think the Georgia State Patrol person encountered the vehicle, and he's the one that actually engaged in the chase. Where I have a no chase policy for City of South Fulton police officers. The only thing that we're able to chase for is a forcible felony. In other words, if you shot somebody, if someone is raped or something of that nature, then we'll typically engage um, in a chase. And in this circumstances, it probably would have risen to that level. If I remember correctly, I think the person pulled out a gun on the individual and took his car at gunpoint. And that's how the Georgia State Patrol actually got started in the individual. But you're right. We don't want car chases going down into many of our residential areas.
Okay, because that's the second one we had.
Yes, ma'am. And I remembered the first one because I think the first one happened a little over a year ago, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, the first one happened a little over a year ago, and since then I've changed our policy. So, but I'll talk with the director of the Georgia State Patrol. The Georgia State Patrol, for whatever reason, they've never changed their chase policy, and I don't think they're ever going to. But I'll talk with Director Wright. He's actually a very good friend.
Well, my thing is that if they're going to come through and chase somebody, will they please block the entrance so they can give them, not let them get out?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Hi. First, thank you for taking the call, coming on the call tonight on Councilman Reeves' call. I appreciate you being here.
Yes, ma'am.
But why is it so hard to clean up Old National? Why is it so hard to clean up the violence and the crime and the thing on Old National? It's not like we talking about 10, 15 miles of of crime. We talking about just a couple of, maybe a mile and a half. How long is Old National? About a mile, mile and a half or so, 2 miles.
Well,
Why?
we don't look at just Old National. We look at the Old National corridor. In other words, all of the streets that branch off of Old National. We look at all of those. We look at Godby Roads. We look at Flat Shows. We look at a lot of those areas. And when we examine that, we see that 59% of the overall crime for the city of South Fulton happens along that corridor. Because to be perfectly honest with you, when you just look at the violent crime on Old National, if you just look at the ones on Old National, there's really not that much in the way of violent crime on Old National in comparison to some of the side streets and along the corridor. And so what has to happen over years is you have to have a consistent presence and you have to have a consistent level of enforcement to make sure that you're managing the crime rate. Now, when the crime rate gets to a point to where it's 5 to 6 times the national average, then you really have to chip away at that crime rate. And when I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were on the call, that this year District 5 has a 34% decrease in crime and District 6 has a 22% decrease in crime. Those are very significant. But if you look at the overall crime, it's still much higher than the national average per capita, right? And so we have to continue to walk those numbers down, because when I first came over as the police chief, I kept hearing all of these horror stories about the response times. And I looked at our beat alignments and found out that we only had 8 beats in the city of South Fulton, 8 beats to cover 100 square miles. But each one of those patrol beats was 10 square miles, which is the same size. College Park is 10 square miles, just to give you an indication. So you had one police officer patrolling 10 square miles. And those beats had not been redone since 1971. Well, in 1971, most of the city of South Fulton was farmland. And so you could patrol with 8 beats. Well, when we talk about 500 and 600 subdivisions now, I went to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech did a beat study and said that we went through 200 different iterations of a beat design. And they said that we should have closer to 18 beats as opposed to 8 beats. So between 1971 and 2018, somebody fell asleep at the wheel. I mean, I'm just, I know Lewis Graham. I've known him since I was a kid. He was the police chief here, I think, back in the 80s. I've known Cassandra Jones for a long time, but under no circumstances do you go 40 years without having a beat study or a beat design. I spent 30 years in Atlanta, and I went through 5 different beat designs in Atlanta in the 30-year period I was there. And so, if you don't have the right level of presence, if you don't have the right level of enforcement in those areas, then they're neglected. And it's so easy catching the drug dealers out here in South Fulton now. You could just tell they haven't been policed. I mean, we're literally able to execute search warrants every other day, just about. That's why I was surprised to hear Dan's complaint about Fellwood. But at the end of the day, violent crime follows narcotic sales. So it's when one drug dealer decides to rob another and they shoot it out amongst themselves is when that bullet goes into a bedroom and kills a small child sleeping in their bedroom. And so making sure that we target that type of behavior is going to be extremely important. And that's one of the reasons that we have kind of a balanced approach as it relates to our crime fighting strategies. We didn't put everybody in patrol. We made sure that we had proactive patrols. That's what our narcotics unit does. That's what our gang unit does. That's one of the reasons we have a traffic unit, so that they can go out and try to put some proactive measures in place so that we can make sure that we're walking those numbers down. If we had 300 police officers, it would be much easier for us to get the desired results that we want immediately. But when you had someone that allowed the South Fulton to operate with 8 beats for 40 years when they needed 18 beats, so not to shock the budget all in one year, I've asked the mayor and council to allow me to add 20 to 30 police officers every year. And you can responsibly recruit that many police officers every year. If they gave me 100 positions this year, I couldn't fill 100 positions in a year's time anyway. And so we're going to have to ramp up to that level. And when we get there, I mean, you'll see it's not going to always be like this. You're going to start to see the desired results as we began to grow as an organization. But unfortunately, when we were the county, public safety was ignored for a very long period of time.
We have a couple of questions. One is, when will you be having the police and pastor event again? Will they be promoting it more to the community to participate?
We have another one scheduled for April of this year. and I'm really looking forward to it. The turnout at the last one was tremendous. And we got a lot of really positive feedback from the faith-based community. I received a call from the NAACP about the event. I think they were present at the last one, but I think they want to host our next one. And we want to make sure that we get the South Fulton Minister Alliance more involved in the process also. But I'm really looking forward to the one in April, because the one that we had last month, it was just tremendous. I meant in November, it was tremendous.
What made you start the Coffee with a Cop program?
Dunkin' Donuts.
That's right. Our unofficial office meeting space.
Yeah, man, every morning, I would pull up to Dunkin' Donuts and I would sit in the front in my car, and I would roll my window down, and people would just come up and bring me tips about different drug houses and different things that was going on. And I would literally sit in that parking space from 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock and greet people coming up to the Dunkin' Donuts. And people got to a point to where they were actually just coming up there to bring me information about different things. And so there's one thing that I understand: it can't always be just about me. And so I want to make sure that people get the opportunity to meet our police officers and engage them as well. But Councilman Reeves will tell you, his dad used to come up and talk to me every day. Every day, his daddy would show up like clockwork and come up and talk to me while I'm sitting up there at the Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll know when he up there, that means Chief is there.
Yeah.
So people do come, and that's a good thing. And so when we do have them, we do ask for y'all support, and just spread the word. Even if you can't make it, send somebody up there who be asking you questions about that, and say, look here, you have a bunch of officers, community policing, and they're ready to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Well, it is. Anybody else have any questions? Well, it is now.
Yes, one more.
Go ahead.
What is it that you would like to see the residents do more of this year from a police perspective?
I would like to see us engage a little bit more. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start the Citizens Advisory Council. I think that sometimes people feel like their voice doesn't really carry weight with people. But there's a reason I give my cell phone number to any and everybody. I give it to everybody because we're such a young police department, and I need y'all to help me raise this baby. Now, sometimes some people use it. Every time, a 911 call comes up, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. When we see things in our community and the police department is not responding, in a way that's upholding the values of the community, those are the sort of things that I really want to know about, with respects to, what our expectations are as a community. And so I've gotten some people call me when their trash don't get picked up. There's one lady, she called me at 2 o'clock in the morning when her trash don't get picked up. But that's something else right there. But at the end of the day, I give it out because I'm really concerned about the reputation and the growth of our police department because we're so young. And we get police officers that make mistakes. I got stories that I tell about, mistakes that I made as a young police officer. When you first put that badge and gun on, you feel like you have to enforce every law known to man, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, there are some things that you use as teachable moments and educational opportunities in your communities. And that's one of the things that we try to instill, in our police officers. Take those opportunities to educate people on why those laws are in place, and don't feel like you have to enforce every single law that's on the books when you have the opportunity to educate our people, because sometimes they just don't know.
Maybe we should create a seminar for people to get more clarity on these laws.
Right.
Final question for the evening. Are you familiar with the City of Atlanta Clippers and Cops program?
I
And would
am.
you consider doing that, something like that?
In fact, Tyrone Dennis is one of my mentees. He started Clippers and Cops, and he's since moved away and gone to, I think, St. Louis, Missouri. But I do know all of the young men that actually started Clippers and Cops in Atlanta. I spent 30 years there, and so when I was there, they had won a lot of awards for Clippers and Cops, and um, Oric Curry, who's one of the leaders over there, is trying to help us organize some of those with our community policing section. And so, yes, I love it. I love the idea of it, and we're looking at implementing it. In fact, we were supposed to do it before the pandemic started, but once the pandemic started, we just kind of put some of our programs on the back burner for now. And it's mostly because of the amount of manpower that we've been losing. And the worst thing you want to do is start engaging with kids, and then you're not able to follow through. And I understand the importance of that, because if you commit to a child that you're going to be there, and then the next thing you know, you have 4 or 5 police officers out out in quarantine, that sends a message that's really counterintuitive to what we really want to accomplish, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tell you, that's why we have the best chief in the nation, as he's been duly awarded as that designation as well. And because we don't just talk, he doesn't just talk about it, he actually invests in the officers for training and the training that is needed for this 21st policing. So kudos to you, Chief Meadows. You know you have my full support. And I just tell you all, it is now 7:30, and I want to thank you all for coming out on this Monday night and taking time out of your day to get informed. And you hear it straight from the subject matter expert's mouth, as we just give the facts and we deliver the message, as we try to give you the best service that we can possibly give you, because you are deserving of that, and you are the constituency, and we work for you. And thank you again. So anybody frying up some wings, it's Monday night, so give me mine. I want 6 lemon pepper. Today I want a Sprite with some lemon lime too with it. So, however, thank you again, and we'll see you next Monday. Dan, don't forget to call the chief right after this call. And if you need me, I got to come see you anyway. So thank you all again, and y'all have a good evening.